Guys, I think it's time for an update on Project Flux Pack. Let's go. Okay, guys, welcome back again to Dave's Dimension. Welcome back again for another video. Welcome back again to the channel. That, of course, is always your home for tech, toys, and talk, and, of course, the channel where chaos and insanity will always reign supreme. So I'm back again. Got a little bit of an update. Yes, the workspace is in full swing. As you can see here, I have my PS5 controller there. That's not really needed. But I have an entire area full of parts. Uh, Parts for the wands, or should I say the temporal neutrona gauntlets, and filter. Just we have tons of parts, and 3D printing parts and more parts for this flux pack that we're building. Now, I did have kind of a setback, but it only set me back about maybe a weekend's worth of work. So that's not terribly too bad. Now I'm going to throw up a picture of the original Flux pack. You can see right there. Now, the original Flux pack. Now I'm going to be repeating a few things I did in my previous Flux pack video because the sound was quality. For some reason, there was a doubling of my voice, and that cannot be controlled. So don't worry, we're not going to have any weirdness here. Okay, so let me explain some of what we did. Now, all the parts, pretty much almost, I'll say 99% of the pack is going to be 3D printed parts. So I'll say 95%. Now, my Bamboo Labs P1S printer is what I'm printing this on. Okay, so we don't have an overly large printer. We are printing each part by part individually. Now, no sponsorships here. Okay, everything I'm doing that pretty much all the parts I'm putting on here are sourced directly through free files that you can find online. However, now what we're doing here is, as you can see, these files are the QPack files by Taco Belly. You can find these online. I'm actually going to have a link in the video description below to exactly where you can find these. Okay. Now, the QPack, if you're a Ghostbuster and you've been building packs, you've heard of QPack. Now, QPack are basically, at least in my mind, they're considered to be, if you want to build a pack from scratch and you want it to customize as much as you want. Now, these packs, they can be designed where the top of the cyclotron can be permanently mounted, or it's also designed if you want to make something similar to what those of us who might have participated in the HasLab with the first Spengler Proton pack from Afterlife. So if you wanted to have the cyclotron's cake, if you want to have special lighting setups, you can do this. This is a proton pack set of files that you can customize the hell out of. If you want GB1, you want GB2, you want Afterlife, you want some of the parts to be Frozen Empire style. All these files are included right there. So if you want a mix of GB1 mixed with Afterlife and Frozen Empire, which are codenamed Phoebe and Elsa accordingly, you can do that. These files are definitely the way to go. Now, I started with the Mark III, the MK3, but I came across some issues due to my own ignorance, guys. Now, when I was younger, when I was in high school, I took cabinet making in my high school's vocational trade school. I didn't pursue it because of asthma. That's a whole other story. However, and my father taught me this. There's an old adage when it comes to building anything, whether it's wood, plastic, metals, whatever you're working with. Measure twice, cut once. That was my problem. Let me show you. Now, this is the first one I did. Okay? As you can see, I got pretty far with this. All these parts are bonded together. They're not perfect, but they're bonded together. Now, right here is where we have usually the blue and the red hosings coming from the injector tubes. Now, for those that don't know, On the proton pack, you have your power cell. And these tubes right here, these are the injector tubes. And then you usually have like a little black grommet that comes out right here. And then you have a red and a blue tube that then run to the bottom of the cyclotron. Okay. Now, if you notice, these two right here, they're kind of small. Just to show you guys, these are kind of small, right? Now, let me hold the tubes or the holes for the for the injector tubes. Massively bigger. That was my mistake. Okay. That was my mistake. I wasn't double checking the files before I printed them. So, what's my problem? What's my solution? I could try to fill these in, okay? Or I wanted to do the strain relief components. There is, for lack of a better term, anyone who's not familiar with the actual terms, a strain relief is just that. It protects against strain relief, okay? It is a black grommet with an almost coil-like spring part that basically protects that wire, okay? Let's say, for example, okay, my mouse. My mouse has a wire right here, right? This is you guys right here. You get the wire right here, right? Now, with some tubes, some wiring, if there's a lot of bend, a lot of give, that can cause damage to a working tube or wire, right? The strain relief actually it basically works as a frame or support to protect against that. So, I once I reviewed all the files and I found the Mark IV, the MK4 files, I found the right ones that I needed. Okay? And let me show you. With the MK4 files, we have a slot here for the hose. Okay? This piece is very modular. I can put a special mount onto here, and then this will actually, I think, let me see, you can go this way, or you can go that way, depending on how you really want to do it. I'm probably going to go this way, but then you have your screw holes here, so you can actually put your hex head screws right here and mount a special bracket onto that so it protects the hose. Now we're going to have a similar bracket that goes right here. 1, 2, 3 screws, and we have the larger piece, and I'm going to show you guys in just a moment. Okay, so here's the part with the larger holes. Okay, so this is just going to simply, as you can see, we have the 3 holes right here, and they correspond with this. So that's going to mount perfectly on here. Now, yes, there's a little color difference because you have to use some different filaments, but this is going to be repainted anyways, guys. So this is how modular it is. All these smaller parts to make it a little bit simpler. Now, yes, I did print this into 4 sections with a 5th component, but this is all now one piece. Now, there is a glue, a 2-part glue that I'm using for this. Okay, you can get this on Amazon, and I'm going to have the link in the description below for you guys. Now, why is this 2 parts? You spray one side, the other part you apply with this glue, and when you bond them, you have to make sure they're being bonded, they're being lined up perfectly, because guess what? They bond within seconds. Okay, I could slam this to the ground 1,000 times, it's not going to break apart. Now, I am also going to, now when you're doing something like this, you're also going to need, well, a soldering needle. Now, I have one. I have it set aside somewhere. Obviously I misplaced it, but I have to grab it. Now, there's a lot of techniques you can find, a lot of videos you can find on YouTube, where after you bond the pieces, you want to take your solder, preferably with a flat tip, and you want to kind of merge these pieces together. That's going to fortify everything. But they also have these bolts here. to help reinforce, and also for use with, there's going to be some internal brackets you're going to mount later for the back of your proton pack, also known as the motherboard. But right now, there's no gaps between these pieces. Now I'm going to be using a special, uh, a special bonding agent, very, pretty much Bondo, that we're going to use to smooth out these lines so that once we sand everything down, you won't be able to see those lines whatsoever. Now, because I'm going with the Mark IV or the MK4 versus the MK3, there's a lot of differences that I'm doing now. Okay, I have to reprint the cyclotron lid. Some people call this the cake pan. Oh, this will not fit on the new version. This will fit on the old version. So if I ever do a Mark III, I'm probably going to save this. Now I bonded this is called the end filter. So this is bonded to it. I cannot break this off. And this is applied by the glue. So this is one piece, and this is the second piece right here. But you couldn't tell from the outside. These parts came out great. And this is without any sanding. No sanding here. No sanding, no Bondo, no primer. A little bit of residue from glue. This can be smoothed out by sanding. But this is right off of the printer, just using Silver Silk PLA. Okay, there you go. Now, I've already 3D printed the bumper. Now, I'm not going to go with the AKA the thong, the yellow one you see back there, the tri bumper. I'm going with the dual bumper, which is just the flat bumper that you would see. Now, as you can see, this is also part of the Q-Pack. You'll find these files along with the Q-Pack files, and believe it or not, okay, now I sanded these down. It was a little tough to try and get these to merge together, but then I just simply sanded the inside down. Now I am going to glue this and apply the Bondo to it, but for the most part, I mean, you can almost not tell that these were two pieces if you didn't see that line right there, and that line's going to go away very quickly. So there we are now. With the bumper peeking out, now because this is going to be a Back to the Future themed bumper, we're doing some things a little bit differently. I have to reprint this logo, but I have a DMC logo that is the DeLorean Motor Company. I'm actually going to have that right here to give a little bit of flair to make it kind of look like the car, like the bumper. And if you notice, I'm going to throw it back up there. The Flux pack, if you see the picture you're looking at right now, is going to focus on the bumper. Now, the original bumper, I had what was called an L wire, and I'm going to have a link in the video description for that. But I had one that went the length here, and there was a wire that went inside to the pack. I'm going to have that as well. However, I also had a screen mesh going over that L wire, that flat LED. I had a screen mesh going over that. And then I had an oxygen hose going here and here with a bendable wire on the inside for form. And I spray painted them. Actually, I hand painted them silver so it looked like the bumper of the DeLorean or the Flux bar. Throw that picture up there so you can see how those two came together. And that was the original idea off of the Spirit Halloween Proton Pack. So I'm going to carry that theme, but with a little something extra. Now, usually on your Proton Packs, you have the bumper and then the small round part that protrudes outwards. And that's called a shock mount. Well, right now, unless I change the idea is to take this DeLorean DMC wheel that I 3D printed from Bamboo Labs, actually on their platform. We're going to have that right in the center. So I think that's going to give it a nice, cool look. At least that's the idea. This may change. I might go with a larger item, or I might replace it with something completely different. But that's the idea so far, is to take this, which is actually just two pieces. Maybe took an hour to print both of them, a little bit of glue, and to have it right there. I think that's going to give a nice, different look. Now, obviously, this already has a decent kind of a sheen to it, but you can see that this is PLA plastic. I have a black automotive paint that I'm going to do because I want to give this kind of a nice gloss. I may go with a maybe more of a matte, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to do one coat of it and see how it turns out, see what happens. Now, I am printing the other parts. These are all part of the Q pack. You'll find these here. Now, I do need to sand this down a little bit. Now, sometimes when you're 3D printing, you may have to rotate an item in a certain way. But if you notice, we got this little string effect. It's almost hair like filament print. Now that's perfectly fine because nobody's going to see that, but they will see this roughness. This I'm going to smooth out. I'm going to get a hand sander and kind of smooth that out nicely. But yet again, here's the booster tube. This is going to go right here. I do need to sand that down a little bit, but that's going to cover up that roughness anyways. So you don't even have to worry about this. Plus, I will say this, guys. Now, this is two pieces. I do have to sand this down because some of the glue is sticking out. And we're going to have the ladder that goes across it. So that's going to cover it up as well. I will say this, guys. When you're making a prop, it doesn't have to be perfect. In the world of Back to the Future and of Ghostbusters, nothing has to be perfect. You might be saying, Dave, it's a prop. It has to be perfect. No, it doesn't. It has to be with, I mean, it doesn't have to be, but try your best to put it within canon. The Ghostbusters were three scientists who lost their jobs, pulled their resources together, of course, mortgage raised house, and they're renting a poorly dilapidated firehouse that had substandard power needs. They did not have laboratory conditions. They had enough money to buy, spend about 5,000, just under $5,000, 4,800 for a car, buy all the parts to try and fix up said car, then try to build three and then four unlicensed nuclear accelerators and build them in open spaces without laboratory conditions, without the proper equipment. So the Ghostbuster proton packs are all patchwork. They're all patched together. Okay? And that's why they use the term unlicensed nuclear accelerator. You know? And the first time they go on a job, even Egon says, I blame myself that we haven't had a chance to properly field test them. So they don't even know if they're going to work the very first time, guys. So that's the thing. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay? These are equipment that are thrown together. Now, in the world of Back to the Future, Doc Brown bought a DeLorean, and he basically created his own nuclear reactor to use the plutonium, which he borrowed from some Libyan terrorists. Fictionally within the story, that is that is the line that they go with. Nothing against anyone who might be of Middle Eastern descent. That just happens to be what the original storyline was. I'm sure if it was made today, it'd have a completely different storyline. So if anyone's offended, I do apologize. But he got the plutonium illegally, okay? And he had to build a reactor that can take that plutonium and then transfer it and modify it into pure electricity that can power the flux capacitor and power the time circuit so that they can travel through time. He needed to generate the 1.21 gigawatts, courtesy what normally is a lightning bolt. So again, the DeLorean was not the cleanest looking vehicle. Inside the DeLorean, you saw, ragtag components here, there, everywhere. Loose. You had wires. You had buttons everywhere. It was very confined. It was very makeshift. It was the first time machine ever. So again, this is a person who does not have perfect laboratory conditions, yet he built a time machine out of a DeLorean. So, I mean, again, it doesn't have to be perfect to or doesn't have to be aesthetically pleasing to every person out there, but within universe, within canon, it's patched together. That's how Doc Brown was. That's how the Ghostbusters were. Everything was kind of patched together, guys. Not everything was 100% perfect. And hell, you saw in Ghostbusters Afterlife when Phoebe is putting the proton pack together, it's old, it's aged. There's failed components that she had to fix and tune up herself, right? Again, nothing has to be perfect. But if it makes sense within the canon, there's there's your lightning rod, for lack of a better wording. Now, this little this kind of fuzzing, almost blotchy effect. Now, sometimes you see this on paint, but this is on PLA. This is all silver silk PLA. I bought this silk PLA on Amazon. You know, and the great thing about all of these files, they already have the holes. All the holes here are what you need to put all the correct parts in using the correct hardware. So everything is in here. There's holes for you to bolt these parts together if you want. I'm using that two-part glue that I mentioned before. Now I did have that same kind of effect here in here. See right here on the gearbox. So I'm actually going to sand this down again. I'm actually going to sand it down and I'm going to see if I can smooth it out with that Bondo I'm going to be using. Okay. Now I've already bonded. These are one, two, three pieces here. They're already bonded here, but they're perfectly, almost perfectly flush. I mean, I could put a little Bondo in here. Again, we have holes. Normally, this is where the V hook would go, where you holster your neutrino wand. But the neutrino wand I'm doing is completely different than what you guys can imagine. So this is one solid piece right here. And of course, we have the ion arm. Now, I've already bonded these two parts together now. There are holes here, so yes, if I wanted to, I could put the right here. If I wanted to, I could put the switch here. We have a little space here for the because there's little elbow parts that go here in a transistor. And these are two 3D printed pieces I printed myself with gold and black. And that just goes right on there. Now, of course, when I'm done, I am going to glue it on there. But I mean, from a distance, can you really tell that this is not real? But it is plastic. This is actually PLA. So when I'm done and when everything's painted, I will just put this right on. It's amazing and scary what you can do with 3D printed parts. There is what's known as a clipper valve. I have that right there. Technically, all I really need to do is to get a label, like, I don't know, maybe from Moby Signs on Etsy, which I highly recommend. And bam, you have your label. You have this already made. These are 3D printed parts right here. This is one part. I think this is one part onto this and then this. Now, he even has, Taco Belly and Q-Pack, they have the holes right here. So just like on a regular clipper valve, you have those holes. Same thing on there's an alternate one here with the higher neck right here. Again, you can see some of that blotchiness I mentioned before. Now, I can fill that in, sand it down, make it look a little bit nicer. But hey, maybe a little corroded piece was a little bit cheaper, and that's what Doc spent the money on. The concept for the Proton Pack is years ago I read a fan fiction someone wrote where it was Doc Brown working in the private sector and he met Ray Stantz. In Ghostbusters 1, Ray Stantz makes a reference like, hey, Peter, you've never had to work before. I've worked in the private sector. I know they demand results. So that's where the concept was like, hey, Ray worked with Doc Brown in the private sector once. Maybe they collaborated and exchanged ideas on their dream projects one night. Maybe they were out drinking and Doc talked about how he always wanted to build a time machine and maybe some of his thoughts. Or maybe him and Ray collaborated together to build the Proton Pack that I'm building right now. That's pretty much the concept. Now, the wand that I'm building, I'm going to throw a picture of what I'm actually basing my concept on right there. Stop it. There you go. My camera responds to hand gestures. So, in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, Janine shows up and she's actually suited up and she's wearing a neutrino gauntlet. Now, neutrino gauntlet has basically one cyclotron. They can't really Can you really consider it a cyclotron? I don't know. But within within the show, within the movie, it's considered a neutrino gauntlet. A basically limited power neutrino wand. Instead of wearing a big bulky proton pack on a small frame of Annie Potts, that was a genius idea to come up with a little arm blaster. So this will actually strap onto my arm, and there is a pole that's going to come out with the trigger handle and trigger button right here. So I can just move this around instead of pulling out the holster and trying to reholster it or hang it from my belt. I'm going to have this strapped to my arm. And again, these files are files you can get on Etsy and other sources. There's already grooves here for the straps to go right through. Now, this is basically the reverse. If you took a neutrino wand and held it up to a mirror, this is exactly how it would look, which makes perfect sense. So I can still hit the toggle switches right here, as with my left hand. Toggle, toggle. And usually we have the trigger right here. But the trigger wire is going to go through the, basically along the pole. And the trigger will be right there at the end. As you can see, the images I have up, that's basically how the neutrino gauntlet works. However, instead of one uniform cyclotron, I am going to have a hose going from the back of the wand into the proton pack. So it will be one device. So it will be connected all together. Now, going back to the original proton pack, I had a stroke of genius the first time I built it. I got one of these. It is a Back to the Future flux capacitor, but it's a Yahtzee. Why? Dave, why would you do that? Couldn't you like maybe 3D print one? Yes, I could 3D print one. However, this has all the electronics I could possibly want. Let me explain. The way this works is you open it up, the back of the the flux capacitor has a little cavity. You can use that to kind of like throw your dice out. Okay, that's kind of the concept. There is an on and off button back there with a battery slot. Now, what I did with the original one was when this shakes, this lights up. That's the genius. I had it mounted on the back of the proton pack facing outwards. So whenever people would see me walking, they would automatically see they would see the flux capacitor fluxing. You would see the lights going because it worked off of vibrations. I don't need to mount this or wire this into the internal electronics of the proton pack. I have the proton pack on, and then all I have to do is make sure that the switch on flux capacitor is turned on, and it was running perfectly. Now, the original pack, it was a hodgepodge. It was a Frankenstein of several things. But fortunately, through some hit and misses, some stumbles, some falls, we got things to work. I think I had three different light switches. I had to turn on the flux capacitor, and then I had to turn on the power for the wand itself. It wasn't the cleanest electronics on the inside, and I upgraded it before I sold it a couple years ago. So, but with this time around, I think we are going to only have 3 steps. Turning on Mr. Fusion, the flux capacitor. I don't know why I keep saying Mr. Fusion. Flux capacitor gets turned on, and then I'm going to have the main power switch on the wand, so I can turn the power proton pack on and off that way. So I won't need to worry about the switch under the ion arm. And then I'm going to have one other switch that will turn on the LED lights that I will have rigged up for the pack. There you go. Now the pack is going to have a lot of electronics, but we're not going to bore you guys with that. We're going to save that for part 2. But what do you guys think so far? What do you think about Flux Pack Mark II, Episode 2? What do you think about where I'm going with all this? Do you have any ideas? Do you have any questions for me? Please let me know in the comment section below. I am going to have links to the first video. And again, I must apologize for the very first video. The sound quality was terrible. There was a very bad echo in it, and I can't apologize enough for that, guys. But guys, we are building this pack from scratch. It's the first time I'm building a pack literally from scratch. Now, when I built the BOK pack, the Ben and Kent pack, that one was from Ben and Kent. All the parts were already fabricated, but I had to still bond them, bolt them, and paint them, and put it in the electronics separately myself. So this time around, we're literally building this pack from the ground up. Uh, Building it from scratch affords you so much. The possibilities are endless. Okay, the possibilities are endless. Hell, I can build a Ash versus the Evil Dead proton pack, which I do want to do at some point in time in the future, but we'll see what happens with that. Stop it. I hate it when this camera does this. There we go. Uh, but literally, the possibilities are endless. Yes, I'm a big Ghostbuster fan, but I also love Back to the Future. Okay, and this August at Fan Expo Toronto, Doc Brown, Christopher Lloyd, and Marty McFly himself, Michael J. Fox, are coming. That's one of the reasons why I'm putting a rush on building the Flux Pack Mark II. I built the original pack and wore it, I think it was 2018, 2019. It's been a long time. And when I sold the pack, I think it was 3 years ago, could be 3 or 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I sold it. And I kind of been kicking myself in the rear because it was something I was proud of. I loved the pack, but also I wasn't using the pack that much. And that's what kind of motivated me. Like, hey, it's just like if you're a toy collector. If you collect something, but hey, you don't use it that often, or maybe you don't appreciate it as much as you used to, it's always best to kind of let that object go. Sell it to help fund your hobby. I mean, for me, periodically, there's some Hot Toys or some other figures I have, and I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to get this instead. So I'll sell some other stuff to help fund it. And that's what I did. I had sold the Flux pack and I sold another Spirit Halloween pack, which helped me afford the Ghost, the Spangler, the Afterlife Proton pack, which honestly doesn't even look like the Proton pack it was when I first got it, because I do modifications on it. That bumper was courtesy of Millennium Workshop, who is a great resource. If you're anyone who is interested in getting into prop making, if you're anyone who's interested in, hell, getting into 3D printing in general, I highly recommend you follow Millennium Workshop. And I'm going to have a link in his for his channel in the video description below. You won't want to miss him. Check out his Instagram and also his YouTube page. He has been a tremendous resource for me in starting this process and having an idea on how to do certain things. So he's a wealth of knowledge you guys definitely want to check out. But guys, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to conclude this video. And guys, wait until part 3. Episode 3, we're going to go over a few more parts and some electronics that we're doing. So I'm going to give you guys a full idea into that. But guys, until next time, you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say it every single time. Keep on busting. And I'm always, always going to catch you on the flip side. Take care, guys.